What's up? This is Vanguard T, and once again we're here on Thursdays to go ahead and give you some new information. And today I'm going to show you how to professionally lube your cube. Now, I've seen a lot of videos online and everything, and they just glob in and everything. You don't want to do that with your cube, and I'm going to show you why. But let's go ahead and get started. So to start with, I wanted to kind of show you what can happen when you start globbing in lube. And this is part of the problem right here. You start to collect everything under the sun inside the cube where extra lube is. And you can see, I mean, it's just a mess. So what you want to do to avoid some of this, one is to only lube where lube is needed. Now you can see on the internal parts of this cube, there's absolutely no part of this cube that is touching another part. So you don't need any lube in here. For a fact, you see the metal in here. Now, I noticed one of the questions some people ask is, can I get my cube wet? Absolutely, you can get a cube wet. However, wherever there's metal like this, if you don't dry it off, that is going to rust at some point, unless it's made of some non-rusting material. But don't expect anybody to put that kind of material in a cube. They spend their money on other technology for us. So, and this is a great way. You can also look, this also shows you, like, this one's set up to where you can put the magnets on the core. However, the pieces don't allow it because it has this type of piece. Now, this is a MOU World Record Edition, WRM, but this, don't confuse this with the 2021, because this is, other than the core itself, nothing else is purple. Another thing I want to try to show you from over lubing or adding lube without putting it where it needs to go, you kind of get it dirt building up on the pieces as well. You can kind of see it on this one better. And that's just from where the extra lube sits and it collects. Okay, so I wanted to show you something. Now this is, before we go on, I want to tell you, this is my own personal cube. So, and this was one that I intentionally dabbed lube in for the past month to see how it would come out, and we're seeing the results here. So anyway, nice thing about it, if you do over lube your cube, a little bit of dish soap, and you can take a little bit of a small container, put a little dish soap and water in there and just soak your pieces in there and take them out and wipe them off, and any lube will come right off. Now, what I wanted to show you here was, when you're dealing with figuring out how to lube your cube, you need to be looking at where it connects at. Now you can see, like, in between each piece here, it's connecting along here, it's going to connect along here. But this is the part I really want to show you, because this is where all the inner friction is going to happen, like right through here. And you can see, like, it's happening on the top here, and it's happening in the groove. And if you had another piece like this on this side, it would be doing the exact same thing. So you're lubing, like, right here, you're getting a little bit of contact now, and up in these pieces here. Now the way to do that, and how you know, it's like almost every cube has some sort of groove on here. Now you don't need to get, if you notice, like, this piece has no groove, it's flat. So when it's running across here, it's only touching where these raised edges are. And typically across here, you're going to want to use like a thinner lube, like a DNM37. But you could use like a Dignitas or something similar that has a little bit more thickness to it. The thickness is going to help it last longer. Now for your core pieces, you're definitely going to want to use a thicker lube. Now I see a lot of people mixing their lubes. Some lubes will mix well, but I want you to think of the scenario of oil and water, how it don't mix. And think of the same thing when you're adding lube, like this is a silicone based lube. And I can add water to it, but it's really just going to thin it out, if at all, and it could end up just separating. Now that isn't something I've tested with the silicone lube, so don't take my word for it. Try it on your own. You know, add silicone and a little bit of water lube, like a DNM 37, and mix them together and see what happens. Or Mystic, which has a little bit higher viscosity to it. Now, basically, the reason why you're lubing in here is for the protection of the cube. If you're a speed cuber or any kind of cuber that regularly uses your cube, and I'm taking it you are if you're looking at this video, then basically you want to make sure that you're using a silicone-based lube in the core. Now, the only other time you worried about a silicone-based lube is when you want to increase the control or take away the speed of the cube a little bit. The GAN 12 comes to mind with that, because, you know, a lot of times people complained about the speed of that cube. Now for my cube on the core, I either use a weight 3 from the cubicle, or I use Armstrong Dignitas. Now, typically you'll find that I think you get a little bit more off Amazon than you do off some of the cube companies, because they fill these up and they give you as little as possible for as much as possible. Let's just put it that way. But I do appreciate the smaller size, the handy tips. So they, you know, for that they're worth what they are. Now you can take and you can just squeeze a little bit, because you notice like it was on this track here that we were touching, and on this track up here. Now we can take a little bit of lube here and put it up there. Now the problem is when I take this and I start running it through here, you see it's already starting to spread lube out onto my pieces here, because I used what would be considered too much for what's actually being used. So what I do is I take a brush, and I only use this brush for the thicker lube, and I'm getting right in the grooves I need, and I'm only using as much as needed. I'm not using extra, because all that extra is going to do is it's going to get pushed out, and it's going to sit there and it's going to collect all that hair around your house. It's all the dirt in the air, dust, everything like that. And you can go, oh, there's none of that in my house. Believe me, when you pull your cube apart, you're going to find it. And you don't need a ton. This is the problem. Now, this is the first. My brush is still fairly dry, so I'm going to add a little bit more just to get some more on my brush for when I do the next pieces. But same thing, you don't need, if you got it so thick that you're seeing it everywhere, you're using too much. Think of, you ever worked in a factory or seen a machine that takes a lot of lube? Now, when you look on the outside of that lube, any excess lube, it just pushes out of its way and only uses what's actually on the parts that's being touched. Cube is much the same way. And now this should lube both sections, my top and bottom right here, by lubing this center pieces. And I can feel it's really smooth when I'm touching it. And yeah, I can feel it's getting a little bit of lube on there. Now, if you were concerned, you have a little bit of extra on your brush. You can take and just go around the edges, anywhere where it's going to be touching, and then you've gotten it in 2 places and your cube is extremely lubed. And this is really fast actually. Now silicone is great for the inside. I like to use Dignitas because silicone tends to give you more control and slow your cube down. I prefer this cube being at its max speed. So I like the Dignitas a little bit more. Now, if for your sides, and I'm just going to show you this for the purpose of the video, and I don't recommend that you actually do what I'm about to do, because you'd be mixing 2 different lubes. But what I would suggest is when you're dealing with a thinner lube, you do the same thing. You only need it along the parts of the cube that are going to touch. So like where you see I just did right here, I don't need it on this whole thing. I only need it on the grooves here. I only need it across the top part of the grooves. And now what I meant by don't do what I'm doing is don't use the same brush for 2 different lube jobs. Use 2 different brushes. And the reason why is just like I said, you don't need, lubes don't necessarily mix the way people think they do. I've shown you exactly what you have to do when you're lubing your cube. So basically you just want to make sure you're hitting the contact points. And as long as you're hitting them contact points, you're going to have a nice smooth cube when you're done. You're not going to have too much lube. Taking it apart and cleaning it's going to be easier. Now you may go, oh, I don't want to take it apart, I just want to dab some lube in there. You can, but you're going to end up with lube and you're going to end up everywhere and you're going to end up with a mess. And it doesn't matter, like if you can't see it, it's going to be in there. I showed you from the very beginning how it got inside to the core and everything. Anywhere lube goes, it's going to attract the worst materials. So remember that. And as for this week coming up, GDT did the cross algorithms this week, which if you guys haven't seen that, I'll post the link over here or somewhere, one of these spots. And this week coming up, he's going to be doing a review of the GAN 11, GAN 12, and GAN 13, a comparison I should say, not a review. So don't miss that on Saturday, and he'll pick his new shape starting Sunday. So with all that in mind, this is Vanguard T on Vanguard Thursdays, and don't miss us next week because we're going to talk about where to buy your cubes. So until then, have a good weekend, guys.